Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and you've heard me before. I've sat in with Heidi on occasion for some episodes, and now I am doing the show solo for a while. I hope it will be as much fun for you as it is for me to talk about social media news, what's going on in the world of social media. Sometimes it will be actual news, like things that social media platforms are developing or changes to social media. Sometimes it will be things that are trending, hashtags, etc. Sometimes it'll be quirky, sometimes it'll be more serious, just kind of the basic layout that we've been doing, but I hopefully will bring my own spin to it. As all hosts do, we all bring our own personalities to the shows, and if you listen to any of the other shows that I host, for instance, I host the Book Review podcast, then you'll know that I'm a bit of a nerd, a bit of a dork, but hopefully entertaining if you're, because, wow, now I just sound like I'm pandering. Please like me. Mostly I was just saying that I'm going to try to bring my own spin to the show, my own personality to the show, and hopefully you'll like it, but going to move on now. So we are going to talk about a few things this episode, and the first thing we'll talk about is Snapchat. And if you are familiar with Snapchat, then you know the Snapchat filters. I use them some. Mostly I just like to scroll through and see what Snapchat filters are available each day. I do have one friend and my husband that I will occasionally send pictures to. What I really like about Facebook is Snapchat, is when my nieces are around. I was home visiting my family about a month ago, and my 8-year-old and my 13-year-old niece kept stealing my phone, and then I would find Snapchat pictures and filters saved on my phone. The younger one, the 8-year-old, really liked the one that they had at that time with the snot dripping out of your nose. That was gross, but she thought that was the coolest thing. It was fun to turn on my phone and see what they had done. My older nieces, the teenagers, I guess 13 is a teenager, but the 16 and 19-year-olds have their own Snapchat. So I guess I send them occasionally the occasional picture as well, and they sometimes send them to me. We tend to use more with those two. We tend to communicate more by Bitmoji, which is just how it works for us. So that's great. At any rate, the specific filter that I want to talk about for this episode is the relatively new one that people have been posting all over social media, and that is the gender swap filter. Just lost my words there. So the gender swap filter, you can go on, and there are two different little options. There's one with a beard and one with lipstick. So if you are a woman, you can click the one with a beard and see what you might look like as a man. If you're a man, you click the one with the lipstick and see what you might look like as a woman. And people have been posting them and, commenting, making silly comments. Celebrities have been doing it. It's definitely been the new thing to do with the Snapchat filters. And I did it, and I expected to look either like my father. I've looked like my father with other Snapchat filters before, or maybe my brother. I didn't look like either of them. I maybe looked like a cousin, but not really any of my cousins, like my actual cousins. And I actually did the male one and the female one just to see what I'd look like as a woman, even though I already am. But I just figured, what the heck, I'm going to do that as well. The male one, I think, maybe might, I don't know, not somebody that I wouldn't date myself as a man. Let me just say that I did not find myself attractive. But there's also been some deeper comments about this new filter. It's a lot of fun and it's very silly and people go on and see what it is and, will I date myself, blah, blah, blah. But there have been some valid points brought up, especially by the trans community, about gender identity and gender norms, gender binary, etc. So many of the comments revolve around the idea that, okay, so we can do this Snapchat filter and it can be fun and that's all well and good, but when it comes to actual transgender issues, then it's not fun, then it's unnatural, then it's scary, etc. So there's been a deeper conversation happening, which I actually think is good when something kind of silly or something trending on social media sparks a deeper conversation. I actually do believe that is a good thing. So a couple of tweets that I saw in an article on this subject. Becky with the bad hair says, these new Snapchat filters got y'all out here having fun with gender roles, joking about sex with your homeboys, and sporting beards with lashes. All we ask is that you keep the same energy when you interact with actual transgender and non-binary people. Thanks, management. Another Jerry says, oh, so if queer people play around with gender, it's called unnatural and gross. But if cishet people, cisgender heterosexual people do it, it's called a Snapchat filter. Okay, then. And the first one was a little less sarcastic than the second one, but they both make a fair point. And Dana Vivian White, who is a non-binary person and speaker and board member of Collective Action for Safe Spaces, said there's a fine line between encouraging people to take gender less seriously and not considering trans realities or carelessly perpetrating misunderstanding about trans identities. Some in the trans community have felt that this filter has had a positive effect. One trans user said that they felt, hey, maybe this will make people realize or rethink, is there even the slightest possibility that I might be trans, that I might be gender non-binary, whatever that might be. And they said that they actually had someone reach out to them and tell them it was like a catalyst for realizing that they needed to transition. They said, because you're able to see yourself in a way you didn't think was possible. And yeah, that's really interesting. If you have an epiphany, something that might seem silly at first, but we need to remember that, yes, things can be silly and fun and entertaining, but we need to be conscious of when we are expressing our privilege or our heteronormativeness or what have you in ways that might not be healthy or helpful for other people. We just don't even sometimes think that what we are doing might cause harm. So this isn't to say don't have fun with Snapchat filters, don't have fun with social media, but if you can think deeper about the subject, more the better. And I really appreciate that these conversations are happening, that a Snapchat filter has gotten people talking. And yes, one Natalie Wynn, who's a trans woman, said that she thinks the filter reveals an inherent joy and beauty to metamorphosis, and I think that's something that's appealing to people. This same joy and transformation, she says, must include people who actually go through that metamorphosis. So, unfortunately, the trans community still faces a lot of issues, a lot of discrimination, some scary, scary stuff. And if this Snapchat filter can cause a deeper understanding, a deeper conversation, that's great. But don't just, throw it out there, hey, haha, I changed my gender on a Snapchat filter, while demeaning those who really struggle with identity issues and gender issues. So it's fun, It's silly, but I really, really appreciate that there's this deeper conversation. And I'm wondering what it might have sparked for you. Have you tried it? What did you think of yourself as the opposite gender or the same gender? Like I said, I did it both ways for myself, and just to see what the picture would come up as. What did you think? And have you had any conversations that have sparked those deeper conversations? Has it made you think any differently about trans issues? We are going to take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking about something a little lighter. And yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about Game of Thrones. Don't worry, no spoilers. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, and I will be right back.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. We are taking a bit of a turn from Snapchat filters and identity issues, gender identity issues, and moving now to Game of Thrones. Of course, the Game of Thrones series finale premiered last night. People, of course, are having opinions. There will be no spoilers here because I not only have not seen last night's episode, I have not seen season 8 yet. My husband and I decided that we would wait until it was over so we could binge watch it. Yes, that comes with inherent risks of spoilers, but I've actually managed to make it through relatively spoiler-free. There's been a few things that I have seen. I definitely, speaking of social media news, saw the whole Starbucks cup kerfluffle. Thought that was interesting, made me laugh a little bit, and then the memes that came out around that also made me laugh. So, I do like a good meme. I do like a good trending on social media thing. Is you learn really random snippets of things that you don't have to delve into much deeper. But yeah, so we haven't watched season 8. I know people have been a little frustrated with season 8, feeling like it wasn't living up to the potential of the other seasons, that it felt rushed, all sorts of things. And I'm sure now that it's over, people will have mixed emotions. They're relieved, they're unhappy, they're happy, whatever that may be. Like I said, no spoilers here because I haven't seen it yet. And so don't spoil it for me. But there is trending on Twitter explaining the whole Game of Thrones plot in just one tweet. So take a second to think about that. How would you explain 8 seasons of Game of Thrones? Or, oh my gosh, how would you explain all of the books in one tweet of 240 characters? That is an interesting challenge. So Twitter user Amy Cuddy at AmyJCCuddy posted yesterday, it looks like, can someone please explain the plot/story of the entire hashtag GOT series in a single tweet? And she got some great responses. There's lots of the word incest pops up a lot. There's lots of craziness. There are some it looks like kind of spoilers. They don't exactly tell me anything, but I'm going to skip the ones that maybe relate. So there's a few that really made me laugh. We'll see. Here's another one. Doomed love and incest lead to multi-generation conflict for power. Then that goes into a little more detail about things that may or may not give something away from last night. And then he ends it with, oh, and zombies. Yeah, okay. This one is my favorite. It's from Peter Wang at P. Wang. Shakespeare, but with zombies, dragons, and an odd fixation with castration. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, that's pretty good. This one is 7 Years of Winter is coming finally. 7 years of winter is coming, finally came in the 8th year and lasted an hour. And then we were tortured for a few more hours to see to see what people rule, but I'm not going to say who's ruling. So yeah, it's porn with sword fights. Oh wow. Fantasy takes on the history of British monarchy. Yeah, that's actually pretty decent, but not really funny. Written by a computer programmed with the scripts of Dynasty, Lord of the Rings, and Jurassic Park. Pretty good. So you kind of get the you get the gist. HBO invites you to play Dungeons and Dragons with an especially horny and sadistic 13-year-old dungeon master. And if you think it's not a kid running the game, just remember there's a reason all the parents die. Okay, yeah. So how would you describe Game of Thrones in a single tweet? I can't even begin to imagine how I would do that because I am just not that creative. I have one friend who she's further along than I am. She's seen season 8 except last night's episode, and she has been posting, not live tweeting, live Facebooking, I guess. She's been posting updates on Facebook when she watches the shows, but she doesn't give anything away. So that's good. So I read hers and have really no idea what she's talking about. But then last night, her husband was out of town. So she decided she was just going to, in the hour that she would normally be watching Game of Thrones with her husband, she was going to live Facebook it anyway and just make things up. So there was karaoke, there was a disco ball, there was, I can't remember all of the things that she came up with, but she was just throwing things out there that were absolutely ridiculous. And yet, you know, hey, she may watch the season finale or series finale and think, hey, I kind of nailed that one. Go me. One other thing that I saw trending on Twitter today was about Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister. He is one of my favorite characters just because of his total snark and sarcastic nature, and really watching the growth of his character through the first 7 seasons, and I'm sure that continues in the 8th, has been amazing. I think he is an amazing actor, and I'm not the only one. So there has been a lot of really lovely and touching tweets on Twitter today thanking him for his performance, saying that he really needs to win an Emmy for his performance, and or another Emmy for his performance. One guy said Peter Dinklage is greater than the entire cast of Lost, which that just seems a little snarky. But there's so many wonderfully kind and encouraging and supportive tweets that, you know, it's the internet can be an ugly place and there can be a lot of trolls. So it's really nice when people are supportive and kind, and well, obviously there's some snarkiness, but not directed at Peter Dinklage. That was directed at the cast of Lost, and maybe that's valid, but hey, I do appreciate that there are all of these lovely tweets, and I've just been kind of scrolling through them, scanning through them, trying not to read too much because I don't want to know too much again. And you're probably sitting there thinking, good Lord, woman, I've already watched it. You can spoil it for me. But if you are sitting there thinking, thank you, woman, for not spoiling this for me because I have not watched it, then, you know, you got to find that balance. Yeah, lots of really, really nice accolades for Peter Dinklage, and I would say well-deserved because I'd say he's my favorite. There's many other characters who are close seconds in terms of favorites, but for sheer humor, his character could always make me laugh, which is not something that happens much in Game of Thrones. You know, it's a lot more serious than some other shows that you might watch. It's a lot more graphic than some other shows you might watch, but he could always make me laugh. He could always, and even though he was kind of this funny, sarcastic, droll, sometimes a joke in himself, his character, he also was very deep, and he thought about things deeply, and sometimes he was drunk and thought about things deeply, but his character involvement has been really fascinating for me as a watcher to experience. And so I will add my accolades to everyone on Twitter and say Peter Dinklage is pretty awesome, and I really appreciated his portrayal of Tyrion Lannister throughout this series. So enough Game of Thrones without spoilers. Let's go ahead and take our second break of the podcast. And when we come back, we'll be turning to Facebook for some news. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, talking about Snapchat and Game of Thrones, and now we're turning our attention to Facebook. People have lots of opinions on Facebook, whether they like it, whether they hate it. I mean, people have a lot of opinions on everything, right? And they certainly have a lot of opinions on social media platforms. It's changed over the years. Obviously, its demographics have changed. I've been on Facebook for more years than I care to admit. And, you know, it's got its pluses, it's got its minuses, it's had its difficulties, definitely had its ups and downs. You could have a whole podcast just on the ebb and flow of Facebook in the world or in society as it has made its way this past decade plus of being in existence. And now, sometimes people say, well, you know, Facebook is only for old people, and that's okay. I'm old. I'll live up to that. But one thing that I don't think of when I think of Facebook, when I do think of Facebook, I think of algorithms and frustrations and privacy breaches and, friend requests and following people and Facebook stalking and Facebook vague booking, et cetera, et cetera. What I don't think about when I think about Facebook is robots. And I'm wondering if that's something that comes to mind when you think about Facebook, because Facebook is delving into the world of AI, and I just never really thought about that. So in a recent article on The Verge, I saw that Facebook is experimenting with robots to push its AI research forward. But don't expect, it says, to see any Facebook robots on sale. Well, darn. If you've listened to me on the podcast before, especially when I was on with Stacy on some of the other podcasts, one of our other show hosts, I'm always joking that AI is going to kill us. There's 8 billion movies out there where the AI becomes sentient and tries to take over the world or tries to kill people. One of my favorite Simpsons episodes is when they get a smart house or they install something that makes the house smart, and the house is voiced by Pierce Brosnan, and then the house falls in love with Marge and tries to kill Homer. It's silly, but there's so many futuristic sci-fi shows that have AI playing a part. There's episodes of Black Mirror that have that, where, AI is taking over, and it's obviously so much smarter and more adaptable than we are, and then it tries to kill us. At any rate, this is not an article about Facebook making robots to kill us. I kind of got off subject there, but I do joke about this. So Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research Lab, FAIR. It's not uncommon for big tech companies to experiment with AI, to experiment with robotics, to experiment with technology, etc. The great thing about robotics, Facebook's Antoine Bordas, co-managing director of the company's artificial intelligence research lab, says, the great thing about robotics is that it takes place in real time in the real world. Which is hilarious because I don't think of it's research and it's being done in real time in the real world, but it makes me think of sci-fi. So he says that the research is wide ranging. Facebook has shared details about a trio of papers. The first involves getting a 6-legged robot to teach itself how to walk through trial and error. The second is about leveraging curiosity to help robots learn faster, so they can kill us faster. And the third is about using a sense of touch to help a robot achieve simple tasks like rolling a ball. Now, obviously, people are doing this. People and companies, etc. There are others who are doing this. Isn't exactly breakthrough research per se. They're being addressed elsewhere, but it is notable that FAIR, Facebook's AI research lab, is pursuing this line of work. The company's chief AI scientist, Jan LeCun, told Bloomberg that FAIR has a duty to see around corners and be prepared for future products and services, including robots. He says you've got to start early. It's not just something you can jump into when it picks up. Makes sense? In some small ways, Facebook has already shown that getting into grips with physical systems can have unexpected payoffs. For example, when the company launched its Portal home video chat camera, it worked with filmmakers to design the camera movements that frame users for each shot. Despite widespread privacy concerns surrounding the Portal, reviewers did praise the company for making the calling experience surprisingly seamless. So knowing how to tie together AI and hardware gave Facebook a small leg up with Portal, and it could do so again with future products. So this is interesting both in the social media news world as well as the technology news world because, it's just interesting I just find it interesting what companies are putting their research and development money into, why they make those decisions, etc. And if you are, obviously Facebook is going to be launching different products, different platforms, etc. So, and those, the point of those is, of course, to increase or generate revenue because they aren't a nonprofit. But it's interesting to see how they go about this research in order to implement new platforms and how they then can work. I didn't know that the Portal, when they were developing things, they worked with filmmakers. I actually have a Portal. We joke that ours is possessed. It's not, because when we talk to my parents, it tends to zoom in randomly on things we have. It's supposed to zoom in on whoever's speaking, or if someone moves. So let's say my mom gets up and moves to another part of the room, then the camera's going to follow her. If my mom is speaking and then my dad is speaking, it's supposed to zoom over to where my dad is. Usually it shows both of them. Sometimes it will just randomly zoom in and zoom out and zoom in and zoom out. It's very disconcerting. It happened on the other end to my parents last weekend when we were talking to them, and they kept asking me why the camera was zooming in on us. Not really even on us, kind of on the wall between our heads. Maybe the wall between our heads had something really deep and profound to say. I don't know. But technology, it's great when it works. It's frustrating when it doesn't, but it's always, to me at least, fascinating to see where it's going, what is being developed, how it is being implemented in terms of, in this case, social media platforms, or what is a social media platform going to do in terms of implementing AI, and how is that going to affect their platform, etc. So I am not a technology person per se in terms of reading what the future is going to do with technology or figuring out how all of this is going to impact whatever. But I do find it interesting to just kind of see how things are developing, where they're going. And, then in 10 years, I can look back and be like, oh, hey, I remember when they announced that they were working with artificial intelligence, and now they're doing X, Y, and Z. Cool. I think it's time to wrap this episode of the GSMC Social Media News podcast up. I hope that you have had an enjoyable experience. I hope you're having a great week. And remember, if you've seen Game of Thrones, don't spoil it for those who haven't. Thanks, and join us next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.